England 1, Serbia 0. Not quite as convincing a start as some of the other teams at the tournament, but regardless, a vital 3 points for this England side. They now know that just one more win will put them through to the next round of the competition. And it was a bit of a mixed game, right? I think the fan response is interesting. People aren't exactly blown away by the England performance. But actually, for the first half an hour, it was really good. Tactically, structurally, Gareth Southgate got it largely spot on. And England looked really bright and promising. And then we had the last hour of the game, which is of course far too long. England were too passive and not really good enough. So that's what we're going to do today. Try and split it into almost two phases. How England started well and had a positive 30 minutes, and then how they kind of lost their way a little bit. So we'll start off with the first 30, where England were dominating the ball, controlling the ball and pinning Serbia back. Exactly what Gareth Southgate would have wanted to do. They largely done this by using a back three shape. Kyle Walker at right back would tuck like this, Stones would play in the middle, and Guehi would move across. Now this is going to give Kieran Trippier the licence down the left-hand side to move much further forward, and Phil Foden is going to come inside. And England are in this sort of 3-2-4-1 shape, which we see a lot of at club level. However, within this shape, England were extremely rotational. For example, at times it could be Bellingham popping up over on this left-hand side, Foden could move to the right. We could also see Trent a lot of the time moving really high, and there were situations where Foden was as deep as being in the double pivot in the first 30 minutes of the game, which was in a way a good thing because it allowed him to get on the ball, but perhaps a little bit too rotational for my liking. The better rotation was when Jude Bellingham was dropping deep and getting on the ball and trying to make things happen, because of course when Bellingham tries to make things happen, things tend to happen. He is that good at football, and it allowed England to move the ball forward with the back three outnumbering this front two, then allowing England to move the ball into midfield where we possessed good passes. In fact, this shape even turned at times a little bit more attacking. Declan Rice would go as a solo pivot, Bellingham would push further forward, and then we've got Foden and Trent outside of him. Almost a 3-diamond-3 structure. You may recognise this structure. Germany used the same shape in the first game. So again, this is a good shape from Gareth Southgate. Positionally, England have got players in great areas. We've got the overload in midfield with this diamond outnumbering the Serbian midfield three. But also, as English players make the runs forward, they can also outnumber the last line, 6 versus 5, which is incredibly attacking, incredibly bold. So that is what England done well for the first 30 minutes. There were a lot of rotations, there were a lot of players getting forward into the final third of the pitch, and the attacking football was genuinely good. The only thing I would say the first 30 minutes lacked from England in terms of on the ball was the runners in behind. Now again, if we are comparing to that German side, who use a very similar tactical approach, systematically, the players were in similar areas, but what we saw from the Germans was Wirtz would go in behind, Musiala would go in behind. That was what England lacked. That player going past Harry Kane, allowing Kane to come deeper and get on the ball, hence the lack of touches in the first half. But regardless, I did feel that the first half was pretty good from England, and the first goal was actually almost textbook how you break down a deep kind of 5-4-1 shape at times from the opposition. We can see England here in a 3-2 shape. We've got Guehi, Stones and Walker the back three, and then we've got Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham as the double pivot, with the front five, of course, pinning Serbia back. Now, what this is going to allow England to do is move the ball quite comfortably to the right-hand side. But if we look at the Serbian defence real quick, we can see that they are man-to-man with the English attackers. We've got the wing-back on Saka, the left centre-back on Trent on this occasion, the middle centre-back on Kane, the right centre-back on Foden, and then a player at the bottom out of shot, also being man-to-man. But the problem for Serbia was that they were man-to-man in deep areas, but there wasn't enough pressure on the ball. And of course, if you give a player like Kyle Walker time on the ball, I know he has his critics, but he's still a very, very good professional footballer. When you give him time on the ball to pick a pass, he can do it. And the passing behind is absolutely brilliant. Again, this is really good tactically. It's really good structurally. It allows Bukayo Saka to get in behind. And this was one of the only occasions where we really had that runner in behind the defence. And we saw the trouble it caused. Because the second you get that runner, it drags the opposition out of position. So because Saka's run takes the wing back out of the game, the rest of the Serbian defence has to react. So the left centre-back now has to come over. But that leaves them at a mismatch in the middle. Because now if we kind of mark up who the centre-backs are covering, we can see that Jude Bellingham is free on the edge of the penalty area. He eventually crashes into the box and puts the ball into the back of the net. And of course we have looked through all of that using Want Video Analyzer. Make sure you check out the link in the description down below to go download the software. It's quality for breaking down goals like this. But it really highlighted for me a positive start for England, a good first 30 minutes and a good tactical structure. But then something changed, right? We all watched the game. We all saw that for the last hour, it simply wasn't good enough. So what I want to do is two things. Point out why it wasn't good enough, which I think most people have already done. But then go one step further and actually look at why Southgate may have done it. Because people are criticising Southgate but not actually looking at perhaps some of the reasoning behind it. So the main thing that people have pointed out is that after the first 30 minutes, England were more passive. For example, in the opening half an hour, we often saw England in a 4-4-2 shape like this, with Bellingham up alongside Kane. Now, there was never really an intense press from England, but it was players engaged high enough to put some pressure on the ball. However, after the first 30, what we saw was Bellingham dropping deep alongside Rice and Trent Alexander-Arnold. It quickly became a 4-5-1 or a 4-1-4-1. The thing what happens when you do this immediately is you sacrifice control, because you give the opposition time on the ball, and when they've got quality players like Serbia do, they're going to take the ball. And they're going to have spells where they dominate possession. And that was a problem that England had. By stepping off a little bit, they did allow Serbia to play out from the back. And of course, I think everyone has already pointed that out. I think the first thing we need to address, though, is why. Why did Southgate make that decision? And to be honest, logically, it was the right thing to do. He just took it a bit too far. If England had gone for a man-to-man press in this game all over the pitch, they would have been in trouble. Because had all these players squeezed super high up the pitch, Serbia would have gone to a long ball game. And we all saw before that they had an average height in the starting 11 of 6'2". Now, when you look at an England side lacking Maguire at the back, you know, with Trent in the middle, who's not the biggest, Walker and Trippier, they handled themselves really well, but on paper, they're not the biggest players. Saka, Foden, whoever it may be. Had England gone man-to-man in this game, I think Serbia would have played long over the top and destroyed England. So England were right to be a little bit passive. We just took it a bit too far, right? We could have been passive in a mid-block, but instead what we done was we retreated all the way back into borderline a low block at times. And this was the big problem for England. It was too passive, too deep. And of course, when you do that, against a side, particularly using this sort of formation with the back three, you do give them the ability to control and dominate the ball. Of course, they've got the back three up against Harry Kane. Kane failed to really ever get any pressure on the ball in these situations. He was almost taken out of the game in these situations. And Serbia were able to dominate. The wing-backs are going to go high, as you would expect. And then you've got these three players in midfield and then the front two. But Mitrovic could also drop deeper. And the England centre-back didn't really want to follow him. So at times, Serbia could get themselves a little four shape in midfield here, with the double pivot, Milinkovic-Savic and Mitrovic, again, outnumbering England in these areas. But again, England's response to this wasn't to kind of swap up the marking system or anything like that. It was to be more passive. It was to drop Trent even deeper, Bellingham even deeper, almost goal side of the ball, to try and cover the space, rather than really going after the man. And that was the problem for England, because again, it just kept kind of inviting Serbia onto them. And Serbia had the shape where they could have hurt England more. This front five up against the English back four could have caused problems. And this is where we do have to give some credit to England. Not necessarily tactically or structurally, but individually. I thought Trippier was absolutely phenomenal from a defensive point of view. I think Guehi done an incredible job and kind of showed everybody just how good he is. We've all known about that quality. He's a wonderful player. Stones had a very solid game, I would say. A couple of times he kind of got done for pace, but in general he had a good game. And I thought Walker defended brilliantly, but the big one was Declan Rice. His ability to sweep up the second ball in midfield, put out fires all over the pitch, was really key to this England side, defensively holding things down. Again, I don't think this was because of great tactics from Gareth Southgate that England looked solid defensively. Individually, England got players behind the ball, and those individuals were very, very good at putting out fires and dealing with situations, which is why Serbia were reduced to just one shot in the penalty area after 20 minutes. After that, we didn't see another one. And England were never really in trouble at the back. I think the frustrating thing for a lot of fans was, yeah, okay, we looked solid defensively, but we lacked anything going the other way. Because players were dropping so deep, when we won the ball back, we didn't really have an outlet, did we? Someone like Harry Kane isn't going to sprint in behind and stretch the opposition all night long. Foden certainly doesn't have the capability to do that, and Saka became isolated, and England didn't have an out ball. And a lot of people will say it was because England played so direct, particularly from Jordan Pickford going long, the most long kicks from any goalkeeper in the tournament so far. And again, I would be critical of that personally. You know, I do want to see an England side which is bold and brave in possession and plays out from the back. And I understand people being critical. But I think, again, we do have to try and look at why. This isn't me defending Southgate. It's me almost trying to explain his reasoning. Let me confirm, I don't think Southgate got it right in this game. But let's explain perhaps why he made the decisions that he did. Basically, Serbia rocked up to this game with the most intense press we have seen at this tournament. The most intense man-to-man system we have seen from any side, including Germany, Spain, whoever you want to look at. Serbia were more intense out of possession than all of them. Combine that with the fact that they are all 6'2" plus, apart from two of them. Physically, that is really, really difficult to deal with. Again, I'm not making excuses, but we're talking about the reasons behind certain decisions. Because what Serbia were willing to do was go man for man. So Mitrovic and Vlahovic are on the two centre-backs. We've then got the midfield. We're going to get nice and tight with our midfield. The wing-backs are pushed all the way up onto our full-backs. And basically what you will see is that they are essentially 3v3 at the back. And England, obviously, on the ball here, don't have a free pass. They don't have a player available to pop the ball to. And this was the problem. In midfield, Rice is obviously a great player and had a really good game and has improved in possession. But he doesn't want to twist and turn in these deep areas. Trent isn't very good at receiving with his back to goal. And Bellingham was the one who could produce moments here. But again, it's not really his main job. It's not what you want from him. And this is why England ultimately went long. Because they felt that if they went into these areas against players who aren't comfortable on the turn, against physical players, we were going to lose the ball in dangerous areas. So the safer option was to go long. Now this is why Kane played particularly high. People have spoken about his lack of touches and involvement. But he did still do an important job for England in the second half. The ability to hold the ball up and then try and bring others into the game. Now, the actual bring others in part didn't quite happen because he got kicked every time he got the ball and subsequently won free kicks, which is still very important for England. But it was a little bit flat for that last hour. Again, the first half hour, was really positive. The last 60 minutes of the game, England lacked that outball, and I think Southgate could have made greater impact with his subs. I think Gordon on for Foden needed to happen to give us that ability to stretch the opposition. We didn't see that. I think Gallagher coming on for Trent was a really good decision. It's the sub that I would have made as well. His energy, he won every single duel when he came on, he completed his passes, he won fouls as well. He was useful. Bowen done a good job when he came on the right-hand side. But my concern would be Southgate's ability to change this game with a brave change. He almost went for the safe changes, the safe tactical changes by being passive, but also the safe personnel changes. Could we have got a Kobe Mainu or a Wharton on in a deeper area? Someone who could have received under pressure and turned and allowing him to play? Possibly. But instead it was cautious. Cautious is how I would describe it. I wouldn't say pragmatic. Safety first is how I would describe this. Just a little bit cautious, a little bit safe. And I think that's why England fans are probably a little bit disappointed. Hopefully I have kind of explained the reasoning to you there. Had England tried to play through this, I think we would have been caught out. So we tried to go long. It did get us out. It did get us up the pitch. I still think we could have used Kane a little bit better, dropping deeper and getting runners going the other way. Perhaps we'll see that in future games. I think Gareth Southgate certainly has some decisions to make moving towards the next game. I think the clash with Denmark will be a very, very different match. And tactically, England will have to be better. It wasn't good enough in this game. Again, the first 30 was very strong, but there was no reaction from Gareth Southgate when Serbia came at England a little bit more. And that will be concerning. But ultimately, to look at the positive side of things, it was a clean sheet. Serbia never had a chance really in this game. No big chances created. England were comfortable, never really looked like conceding a goal. Had a little bit of threat in the final third and a better day in the transition. Would have scored 2 or 3. I do still believe that. Better passes from someone like Foden would have seen a better attacking performance from England. So one more win is needed to go through. So take that positive and move on to the next game. And yeah, that's where we're going to leave it for today. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.